There's a story I need to tell you, one that's been whispering in the shadows, a tale that feels more like a nightmare than a memory. It's about a woman named Eleanor, a woman who had a dream of a wedding so vivid, so real, she could almost feel the lace of her dress and the warmth of the man's hand in hers. But dreams, they say, are echoes of the soul, and for Eleanor, this one was a prophecy, a dark and twisted mirror of a reality she was about to discover. Eleanor was a photographer, a quiet artist who found solace behind the lens, capturing fleeting moments of beauty in a world that often felt harsh and unyielding. She lived in a small, cozy apartment in the heart of Boston, her walls adorned with black and white portraits of strangers who, for a brief moment, had allowed her to glimpse into their souls. She was 29, with a constellation of freckles scattered across her nose and a smile that rarely reached her eyes, a smile that seemed to hold a silent, unspoken sadness. One evening, while sifting through a box of old family photos she had inherited from her late grandmother, she came across something that sent a shiver down her spine. It was a photograph, faded and creased, of a young couple on their wedding day. The man in the photo, with his kind eyes and gentle smile, was the spitting image of the man in her recurring dream. The woman, the bride, was not Eleanor, but a stranger, her face blurred by time and the passage of grief. Eleanor's heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat of confusion and fear. She had been having this dream for months, a dream that always ended with her standing at the altar, looking into the eyes of this man she had never met, a man whose face was etched into her subconscious. The dream was always the same, but the feeling was different each time, a mix of profound love and a terrifying sense of foreboding. She became obsessed with the photo, spending countless nights staring at the man's face, trying to find a clue, a connection, anything that could explain this bizarre coincidence. She began to research old weddings in the Boston area, poring over archives and dusty records, her search a desperate attempt to find a logical explanation for an illogical phenomenon. The more she looked, the deeper the rabbit hole went, and the more she felt an unseen force pulling her into a web of secrets and lies. The man in the photo, she discovered, was named Jonathan. He had died in a tragic car accident shortly after his wedding, a fact that only added to the chilling mystery. His wife, the bride in the photo, was nowhere to be found. Her name had been erased from the records, as if she had never existed. Eleanor's dreams grew more vivid, more terrifying. The gentle warmth of the man's hand was replaced by the cold grip of a nightmare, the love in his eyes replaced by a look of terror. She began to see flashes of a car crash, of shattered glass and twisted metal, and the image of a woman with a face she could not see, her eyes wide with a silent scream. She knew, deep in her gut, that this was more than a coincidence. This was a story that was begging to be told, a story that had been buried for years and was now clawing its way to the surface, demanding to be heard. The photo, she realized, wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a key to a locked door, a door that led to a truth so dark, so horrifying, it threatened to consume her. The dream, the photo, the missing bride, it all pointed to something sinister, a dark secret that had been carefully hidden away. Eleanor felt an unsettling sense of déjà vu, as if she had lived this story before, as if she was a character in a play whose script she had long forgotten. The quiet artist who once captured moments of beauty was now on a terrifying journey to uncover a truth that could shatter her reality. And so, she began her investigation, her camera now a tool for a different kind of truth. She started with the only clue she had, the wedding photo. She went to the address listed on the back of the photo, a dilapidated old house on the outskirts of Boston, its windows boarded up, its garden overgrown with weeds. The house had a strange, oppressive energy, a silence that felt heavy and suffocating. As she stood there, her heart pounding, she couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't just looking for a story, she was looking for a ghost that was waiting for her, waiting to tell her a tale of love, betrayal, and a very dark secret. The house stood as a silent witness to a past filled with untold stories, its decay a reflection of the secrets buried within. Eleanor, her hand trembling, pushed open the creaking iron gate and stepped into the overgrown garden. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and a chill that had nothing to do with the weather settled over her. As she walked toward the front door, a sense of familiarity washed over her, a feeling she couldn't explain. It was as if she had been here before, as if her feet had walked this very path in a different life. The door was unlocked, a strange invitation to a house that had been abandoned for decades. Inside, the air was still and heavy, the silence broken only by the sound of her own breathing. Dust motes danced in the slivers of sunlight that pierced through the boarded-up windows, illuminating a scene of quiet devastation. The furniture was covered in white sheets, ghostly figures in the dim light. In the center of the living room, a single object stood out, a small, ornate wooden box on a pedestal, a box that seemed to hum with an energy of its own. Eleanor's heart raced as she approached the box. She had seen it before, in her dreams, in the moments before the dream turned into a nightmare. She knew what was inside, a knowledge that transcended logic. With a shaky hand, she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a silver locket, a locket she had been wearing in her dreams, a locket with a strange, intricate engraving of two intertwined snakes. As she picked it up, a wave of memories that were not her own, crashed over her. She saw flashes of a wedding, of a woman in a white dress, a woman who looked so much like her, a woman whose face was shrouded in a veil of pain. The locket felt strangely warm in her hand, a warmth that was both comforting and terrifying. She opened it, her fingers fumbling with the tiny clasp. Inside, there were two photos, a picture of Jonathan and a picture of the bride from her grandmother's photo, a bride whose face was now startlingly clear. It was Eleanor. It was her own face, younger, filled with a happiness that was heartbreaking in its intensity. The realization hit her like a physical blow, a truth so impossible, so bizarre, it threatened to unravel her sanity. She wasn't just a witness to this story, she was the main character. The dream wasn't a premonition, it was a repressed memory, a memory so painful, her mind had locked it away. The car crash, the missing bride, the dark secret, it was all her, a part of her past that she had long forgotten. But who was this Eleanor? And what happened to her? Why did she have no memory of this? The house, once a symbol of a forgotten past, was now a mirror reflecting a truth too painful to bear. As she explored the house, she found more clues, more pieces of the puzzle. In the attic, she found a diary, its pages filled with a delicate, flowing script. It was her handwriting. The entries spoke of a love so profound, a happiness so pure, it made her heart ache with a sorrow she couldn't explain. But the final entries were different, a descent into a nightmare, filled with fear, paranoia, and the chilling words, "He knows. He knows everything. I can't escape. He." The word echoed in the silence of the house, a terrifying whisper from the past. Who was he? Was it Jonathan? Or someone else? The diary abruptly ended after that entry, a story cut short, leaving Eleanor with more questions than answers. The house felt alive now, filled with the echoes of a past she was only beginning to remember. She wasn't just an observer anymore, she was a participant in a story that had not yet reached its conclusion. As she stood there, in the silence of the old house, she felt a presence, a cold hand on her shoulder, a whisper in her ear. "You can't hide from the truth, Eleanor," the voice said, a voice she knew, a voice from her dreams, a voice that belonged to Jonathan. The ghost of a love long past had returned, and it was demanding answers, demanding to know what happened that night, the night the bride disappeared. The dream, the photo, the house, the diary, it all led to a single, terrifying question. What did she do? What dark secret had she buried so deep, it had erased an entire lifetime of memories? The answers, she knew, were waiting for her, lurking in the shadows of her own past, a past that was now knocking on her door, demanding to be let in. The whispers of the past grew louder, turning into a roar that echoed in Eleanor's mind. The house, once a sanctuary of secrets, had become a prison of her own making, its walls closing in on her with every new discovery. The diary, her diary, revealed a story of a love affair that had turned into a web of deceit, a story of a woman who had fallen in love with the wrong man, a man who had a dark and terrible secret. His name wasn't mentioned, only the initial T, a phantom in the story, a man who had manipulated her, who had used her, and who had ultimately orchestrated a horrifying plan. Jonathan, the kind man from the photo, was an innocent pawn in this twisted game. He was a loving, gentle soul, a man who had given her everything, a man she had betrayed. The final entries in the diary spoke of a desperate plan to escape, a plan to run away and start a new life, a life away from the man who was threatening to destroy them both. But the plan failed. The car crash, she now realized, wasn't an accident. It was a murder, a cold, calculated act of violence. And she was a witness. The memories came in a torrent, a flood of repressed trauma that threatened to drown her. She remembered the man, T, a charismatic, charming monster who had captivated her with his promises of a new life, a life of wealth and luxury. He was a business partner of Jonathan's, a man who had been slowly siphoning money from their company, a man who had planned to frame Jonathan for his crimes and escape with the stolen money. And she, in her naivete and her blind love for him, had been an accomplice. The night of the accident was a blur of terror and confusion. She remembered the argument, the desperate pleas, the cold, calculating look in T's eyes as he drove the car off the road. She had managed to escape, but the trauma of the event, the guilt, the horror of what she had done, had been too much for her mind to bear. It had erased the memory, created a new reality, a reality where she was a simple photographer, a reality where she had no past, no secrets, no blood on her hands. But the past wasn't finished with her yet. As she stood in the center of the living room, the silver locket clutched in her hand, she felt a cold presence behind her. She turned, her heart in her throat, and saw him. He was standing in the doorway, a ghost of a man, his eyes a chilling echo of her nightmares. It was T, but he wasn't a ghost. He was real, older, but with the same cold, calculating look in his eyes. He had been watching her, waiting for her to return to the house, waiting for her to remember. He had been living a lie for years, a life of stolen wealth, a life built on a foundation of deceit and murder. He had faked his own death, disappearing after the accident, leaving everyone to believe he had perished along with Jonathan. He had been a phantom, a whisper in the wind, but now he was here, in the flesh, a living embodiment of her darkest fears. He had come to finish what he started, to silence the only witness to his crime. He saw the locket in her hand, a key to a past she had tried so desperately to forget. His smile was a cold, cruel mask, a smile that sent a shiver of terror down her spine. "I knew you'd come back, Eleanor," he said, his voice a low, menacing whisper. "You can't run from the truth forever. And now, you'll pay for what you did." The house, once a silent tomb, had now become a battlefield, a place where the past and the present collided in a violent storm of a truth long buried. The ghost of a love long past and the ghost of a murder long forgotten were about to have their final confrontation, and Eleanor was caught in the middle, a pawn in a game she had forgotten she was playing. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning, a terrifying new chapter of a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. The confrontation with T was a horrifying dance between memory and reality. He was a ghost from her past, a living specter who had come back to haunt her. But Eleanor, the quiet photographer, was no longer the naive woman he had once manipulated. The truth, as painful as it was, had set her free, filling her with a cold rage and a steely resolve. She wasn't just a victim, she was a survivor. The final showdown happened in the very room where she had discovered her past, the living room of the old house. The air crackled with tension, the silence punctuated by the slow, deliberate footsteps of a monster and the frantic, determined breathing of a woman who had nothing left to lose. He lunged at her, his eyes filled with a murderous intent, but Eleanor was ready. She had foreseen this moment in her dreams, a horrifying premonition that was now her reality. With a final, desperate surge of adrenaline, she fought back, using the very house that had held her secrets as her weapon. She dodged his attacks, her movements fueled by a lifetime of repressed anger and a newfound strength. The fight was a blur of shattered glass and splintered wood, a ballet of violence that ended with a final, desperate move. She managed to push him back, and he stumbled, falling through a rotted floorboard into the dark, cold depths of the cellar below. The thud of his body hitting the floor was a final, chilling punctuation to a story that had been waiting for its conclusion for so long. Eleanor stood there, her body trembling, her heart hammering in her chest. The silence that followed was a profound and absolute silence, a silence that felt like the end of a long, terrifying dream. She had faced her past, she had confronted her demons, and she had won. But the victory was not without its price. The truth had shattered her reality, forcing her to confront a past so dark, it threatened to consume her. She had to rebuild her life, not as the naive, innocent woman she had once been, but as a survivor, a woman who had faced her own past and had come out of the shadows. The house, once a symbol of her hidden past, was now a place of closure, a tomb for the man who had tried to destroy her, and a new beginning for her. She left the house, leaving the past behind, but the memories, the love, the betrayal, they would always be a part of her. The story of the missing bride, the story of the dream that became a nightmare, was her story. It was a story of a woman who had to die in one life to be reborn in another. The dreams, the photos, the dark secret, they were all a part of a journey that led her to the truth, a truth that set her free, but also left her with the echoes of a past she could never truly forget. And that, my friends, is the story of Eleanor, the woman who dreamed of a wedding and then found the photos in real life. It's a story that reminds us that some secrets are too dark to stay buried, and some memories are too painful to forget. But it's also a story that shows us the incredible strength of the human spirit, the power to overcome the darkest of nightmares and find a new beginning. If you were captivated by the story, if it sent a shiver down your spine, if it made you think, then please, let me know. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next deep dive into the human psyche.